In the battle for the soul of the ANC, the stakes have never been higher, as Secretary-General Ace Magashule challenges his suspension pending corruption allegations as unlawful. The party seems at a loss over how to exert discipline over him. Should he prevail, the party will be forced to revisit its step-aside resolution meant to uproot corruption. Where will that leave the president in his plans to clean up government and the ANC? 𝗀𝗶𝗀𝗶𝘀 investigates.
The game is on. Two teams are playing for the highest stakes. Team Ramaphosa versus Team Magashule. The prize, control of the ANC. After months of dithering, the ANC finally moved on its Secretary-General Ace Magashule and suspended him. He quickly leveled the score and suspended the president of the party, Cyril Ramaphosa. Not only that, he's challenging the entire process in court. Could this prove to be a massive own goal by the ANC? How do the two players' infringements match up? President Cyril Ramaphosa attempted suspension by the Secretary-General Ace Magashule for not satisfying the Integrity Commission's questions on the funds raised for the 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗶 election campaign. Secretary-General Ace Magashule suspended by the ANC for not stepping aside whilst facing criminal charges, including alleged corruption, fraud and racketeering related to a 250 million rand asbestos audit in the Free State.
Our national constitution is very clear. Every citizen is deemed innocent until proven guilty by a court of law.
ANC stalwart 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗆 is spokesperson for the 𝗀𝗀𝗶𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗆 Military Veterans Association, which is standing behind Team Magashule.
There is legal advice that had been given to the National Executive of the African National Congress. Some of that advice came from Dr. 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗆, who said the manner in which you are implementing the so-called stepping aside resolution is unconstitutional.
In an urgent application to the Gauteng High Court, Ace Magashule detailed his objections to his suspension, citing unfair implementation of the step-aside rule. The ANC has opposed his application in an affidavit by Deputy Secretary-General 𝗀𝗁cie𝗿𝗆, countering that Magashule's challenge is absurd and incoherent and goes against the party's resolutions.
We believe that in terms of the ANC's own constitution, that the National Executive of the ANC does not have the powers to amend resolutions of its highest decision-making body, which are conferences.
Ironically, the step-aside resolution in clause 25.70 of the ANC's constitution, formulated to uphold the integrity of people in positions of power, has deepened the divides. But there may be some merit to the Magashule argument, according to independent political analyst Sandile Swana.
Basically, what that rule says, if you are charged by the NPA, criminally charged, then you must step aside, you must be suspended.
Ace Magashule says he has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Actually, the principles of a fair trial are in the ANC constitution. This is an organization of people who are arrested without trial, detention without trial. So their constitution is very detailed about due process. So that is why many said that this so-called Rule 2570 will never fly, because already it goes against the principles that they wanted.
A major contention in Magashule's affidavit is that the NEC narrowed the scope of the 2017 conference resolutions to members charged rather than merely implicated in criminal acts, targeting Magashule for one. But the ANC is making a political choice on how to implement the rule as part of a process that goes beyond just Magashule, according to legal analyst Lawson Naidu.
The question that arises, if he does believe that it's unconstitutional, why has he left it until now to challenge that rule when it was adopted such a long time ago? And that will speak to the issue of urgency. And the court may well say this is a self-created urgency and dismiss his application on the basis of urgency.
Magashule's argument goes further in that his application appealing the suspension was dismissed by the NEC.
The consequences for him, if that process unfolds in the way it has unfolded for President Zuma, is a destruction of his political career. And then at the end, a judge comes and says, no, you're not guilty, as happened with Bongani Bongo.
The very nature of this step-aside resolution and process is designed as a precautionary measure. And in any event, the principle of innocence until proven guilty is a matter that pertains in criminal litigation, not in civil litigation, which this constitutes. So Mr. Magashule will surely be guaranteed the right to a fair trial. The only thing that the ANC needs to establish here is that he has been charged, and therefore the step-aside rule kicks in.
Magashule has been a top scorer in the ANC, rising to the all-powerful position of Secretary-General. And determined to retain that power to the bitter end, he's challenging Ramaphosa head-on.
So Ace says, I suspended Cyril because I was satisfied that he has done wrong. That is what he says in his court paper. He must be satisfied as the Secretary-General.
That situation where there are bank accounts of the CR17 campaign that are closed does not become a critical issue for the majority of the National Executive Committee of the ANC to address. And that indicates to us there's not even-handedness. Certain people are being targeted.
Cyril Ramaphosa, enormous wealth, links to big capital. That's his weakness, his detractors say. But not so fast. The vocal champions of the so-called radical economic transformation faction are themselves often accused of corruption.
If there are allegations of stealing, let action be taken. But don't equate radical economic transformation with stealing. It is the official economic policy program of the ANC.
But many of its champions within the ANC are the same people who are accused of enabling state capture, for example, to thrive for so long.
Why are those people being accused? Because there's selective targeting of them, while others who are not promoting radical economic transformation are left off the hook.
President Ramaphosa has been pursuing reform in state law enforcement agencies, empowering them to tackle corruption. Magashule contends the main goal is to root him out and clear the way for a Ramaphosa triumph in the 2022 ANC elections.
A lot of the success that has been achieved in Cyril getting the majority has been by recruiting the very members of Ace's faction. They know that all the benefits are now with Cyril.
The RET faction is centered around former President Jacob Zuma. At the resumption of his trial on corruption charges related to the arms deal, his disciples within the ANC, including Magashule, made a show of force. And the fans rallied behind them.
I support the SG because he's our General Secretary elected in the conference until we are told that he is guilty.
The Zuma trial is proving to be a convenient platform for the RET faction to galvanize their supporters. Political analyst Professor 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝘀 maintains that radical economic transformation in their hands lacks credibility.
I've just seen too many years where they have been doing virtually nothing.
The RET faction says it's not for lack of trying. Zuma tried his best. He tried infrastructure development. He tried free education. All of those now are being rolled back.
I believe certainly infrastructure development had much attention in Mbeki's days as well. It was not a Zuma invention. It was a grand exit point of Zuma to bring in fee-free education at a time and in a way when it really needed something to build his legacy.
Ace Magashule's suspension was the yellow card, but he's carried on the attack. It's the ultimate game of brinkmanship. So, will he be shown the red card?
Politically, it's tricky because you must look at the tactics of Cyril Ramaphosa because he's the one who fired Malema. So he is unlikely to repeat that mistake. So I think that they will want to cut the wings of Ace and make him a very tame entity inside the ANC.
The Secretary-General will not be out of the game. This is not a football game. This is a liberation movement with a membership. And ultimately, it is not some referee with a set of cards in his upper pocket who will determine the future. But but the members of the African National Congress.
If it were to go Ace Magashule's way, that would be a headache for the party.
It would set a precedent, and then the ANC would be effectively back to square one in how they're going to deal with corrupt elements within their membership.
All indications are that the Magashule team hasn't got what it takes to clinch those goals. I think Ramaphosa's people believe they're lining up because they've had territorial advantage for much of the game. And it is really not a pretty sight to see these two teams playing, but there is going to be a winner at this stage. It looks like the Ramaphosa people.
Thank you for watching our stories here online, and please subscribe below to become part of our YouTube community and be notified when we upload our latest content.